What is the most obscure Pokemon game ever made? I've been playing this franchise for years, trying things from mainline titles, spin-offs, games unreleased in the United States, ROM hacks, fan games, and most recently, an NES port of Pokemon Yellow made by Chinese developer studio Shenzhen Nanjing. In my quest to find more of the most obscure Pokemon creations made by mankind, though, I'm delving once again into the bootleg bag of fun by doing a hardcore Nuzlocke of these developers' ports of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire for the NES. Yeah, no way in hell I'm trying to pronounce those names. But that's not all. We're Nuzlocking all three parts. For some reason, this game isn't in a single cartridge, but instead divided into three with no ability to carry over your team to each new version. Because of this, we're going to be losing out on a ton of our encounters between versions. Will this make me lose the challenge, or will the lack of functionality of the game in and of itself be the cause? Well, I'll just have to play and find out. Make sure to subscribe to the channel as we're about 8,700 subscribers away from my 2023 goal of 200,000. Like this video and leave a comment below with what other crazy obscure Pokemon games you'd like to see in the future. But before we jump in, huge thanks to today's sponsor, Ugreen. Ugreen's portable Nexode RG chargers have recently been released and are quite charming things, I've gotta say. I'm a big fan of the small robot design using the feet to cover the plugs as well as the little face that appears on the LED screen when charging anything from phones, MacBooks, Bluetooth headphones, the works. The super fast 30-watt charger has the ability to charge an iPhone 14 Pro to 50% in just 30 minutes and charges my OneNote 9 extremely quickly as well. And can charge the likes of a MacBook Air M2 from 0 to 51% in just 30 minutes. The high-speed 65-watt charger is slightly larger but includes 3 ports, 2 USB-C ports, and 1 USB-A port instead of just the 1 USB-C port on the 30-watt version. I've used generic chargers for home use, in my car, and in public, but I'll likely not be using any others now since there's 3 nice features to help show its quality. First is the durable design of both chargers, with the detachable shoe plug covers as well as the flame retardant shell, providing extra safety during charging and prolongs the RG's service life. Secondly, the RG series of chargers were infused with the GAN technology to provide 95% energy conversion efficiency, reducing energy loss and heat generation with their chips compared to silicon chips in order to reduce up to 8.8 pounds of CO2 emissions. And thirdly, their temperature control. The thermal guard protection helps to protect your devices in the event of unusually high internal temperatures or output by automatically adjusting power levels to protect your connected devices. So if you, a loved one, or a friend are looking for a fantastic charger going into the holiday season and beyond, use my link in the description to pick one up with Ugreen's Black Friday deals with up to 50% off. But with that, back to the video. So these games are a bit of a mystery. Named Shenki Baobei for the first cart and Kodai Guaisho 2 and 3 for the other two, this entire thing's existence is an enigma in and of itself. Supposedly, these ports were made in 2006, but there's so little information on them that even the Bootleg Games wiki states 2006 or later. Not to mention, there's not even a picture of these games as carts floating around anywhere on the internet. Top it all off, there's no documentation as to what moves these Pokemon learn, how they work, and what enemy trainers have, so we're gonna have a very, very blind time. Heck, there's not even an English translation patch like there was for Shenzhen Nanjing's Pokemon Yellow NES port, but I digress. I'll try my best to translate these things as effectively as possible. So starting off here, this title screen is nonsense. It's just utter nonsense. At least there's an animation of May riding her bike if you keep it idle long enough, but yeah, this definitely smells of bootleg jank from the get-go. Starting a new game, we see Professor Birch show us the first few gyms, do the same thing we would normally do in Ruby and Sapphire, such as adjusting the clock, talking to May, and going to Route 101 to rescue Birch. But there's no choice of starter, and there's no battle against the Poochyena that he's being attacked by. And unfortunately, the starter we're saddled with at the beginning is Torchic, giving us a massive disadvantage against Roxanne. Not to worry though, we will simply get something like Wingull from Route 103, Lotad or Seedot from Route 102, and perhaps even a Shroomish from Petalburg Woods if I'm lucky. Before taking on the first May fight though, I figured I'd go ahead and grind up Torchic to level 8, and for the sake of convenience, I'm just gonna go by the vanilla Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire's level caps, meaning we have up to level 15 to play around with before Roxanne. She's got Mudkip, so at least it's the right starter, but 4 scratches puts down Mudkip without it doing too much damage to us, winning me the fight and allowing me to get Pokeballs for our upcoming encounters. Thankfully, I also managed to get by Route 101 without finding a single Pokemon, so I can buy more Pokeballs in Oldale Town beforehand, finding Wurmple on Route 101, Poochyena on Route 103, and Lotad on Route 102. Thank goodness. Now to Roxanne. It's quite the arduous grind though, as I noticed that Wurmple doesn't have a single attacking move? Well, that's strange. Normally we'd start off with Poison Sting, and surely this has to be based on the Gen 3 learn sets of these Pokemon at least somewhat, right? Well, after checking the translation of the move, it ends up looking like Harden. Okay, why would it have Harden as a Wurmple and not as a Silcoon or Cascoon? Well, my questions led me back to the Bootleg Games wiki, and to my utter shock, amazement, and laughter, I quote, "For some strange reason, the first two carts only contain the first 150 of the Hoenn Pokedex, and they all appear to be using stats, types, and movesets from whoever they correspond to in the Kanto Pokedex," end quote. So as Wurmple is number 14 in the Hoenn Dex, that corresponds to Kakuna in the Kanto Dex. And since that means we're going off of evolution levels as well, that means we're probably just gonna get Silcoon, and that corresponds with Beedrill at level 10. Then it just won't evolve again. That's just utterly baffling, but that means these gym leaders and trainers no longer have type matchups that we would expect. But for me, that means I essentially have Torchic the Charmander, Wurmple the Kakuna, and Lotad the Rattata. Also, reading into the wiki, there was some other pretty important information that I'm glad I know now going in, including the removal of quad weaknesses, so super effective damage will only ever do double, effort values, gender, TMs, HMs, held items including berries, status conditions except poison for some reason, and instead of changing moves like Supersonic or Sing to be able to inflict those statuses, they are now extremely high power moves but inaccurate because they reflect those moves' accuracy. And probably the most interesting of all of them, moves like Self-Destruct and Explosion lose the ability to feint the Pokemon that use them. If I can get my hands on one of those specifically, we will be home free for sure. Lastly, the learn set seems to be based on their Gen 2 learn sets, so I'll have to keep that in mind. None of the trainers thankfully have anything out of the ordinary though, so I can continue to focus on encounters. Following my grind and the catching tutorial with Wally, I end up losing Poochyena on Route 104, due to my lack of wholeheartedly going into the grind and getting them up to like level 12 or something. Seriously, going from being able to use rare candies to bypass this for expediting video creation, to this where I have to manually grind since there's no rare candies in the game's code, period, it's quite frustrating and wastes a lot of time. Not to mention, puts me to sleep. But eventually we do get the party to level 12, evolving Wurmple into Silcoon in the process, before going back to Route 104 and attempting to capture our encounter, getting Zigzagoon after nearly running out of Pokeballs. Now what would correspond with Zigzagoon to give it such a low catch rate? Butterfree. It's a Butterfree. Well, at least that means that Zigzagoon won't evolve and we get to have a fully evolved bug on the team, right? Nope, for some reason it evolves into Linoot at level 7, reverts to a Weedle, and has exclusively Poison Sting because the entire moveset goes away. And it learns no moves afterwards. Great. Well, at least Petalburg Woods gives me Shroomish corresponding to Nidoking. Really hoping this retains a later evolution so I can keep that Nidoking typing in stat line for a bit though. That seems quite good for now. One more grind later and the Team Aqua Grunt inside of Petalburg Woods is an easy beatdown, letting me get into Rustboro City just ahead. There's still some more encounters though, as on Route 116 I can get Whismur... shoot. Well, I guess that means no Rustturf Tunnel encounter for me. Whismur corresponds to Vileplume though, so I can't complain all that much, just as long as it doesn't evolve for a while. God, it's so weird saying that, since normally you can just press B to deny an evolution, but in this port, the Pokemon actually just evolved mid-battle with no choice to deny the evolution. Admittedly though, please, Pokemon Company, you should add mid-battle evolutions to the series. Surely that's an easy enough ask at this point, nearly going into Generation 10 while also retaining the option to deny the evolution. After our grind to level 15 though, Roxanne is ready with her 2 Pokemon, starting a Primeape moonlighting as a Geodude. This makes Shroomish a decent choice to start with as we resist the fighting type attacks and can fire back with Double Kick for decent damage. It does start doing literally 1 damage though after only 2 uses of Growl, so I'm forced to swap back and forth between it and Silcoon, using Poison Fang for some damage, repeating the process a few times until Geodude goes down, leaving just Nosepass, who has Poliwag's attributes and therefore is easy to KO with 3 of Shroomish's double kicks, KOing and winning me the Stone Badge. 1 down, 7 to go, but I'm sure we're bound to run into more jank and moves that make no sense on certain Pokemon here shortly. There's not much in between Roxanne and Brawly. Heck, they won't even let you progress into where Steven is in Granite Cave until after beating Brawly. But they do give you enough space to run around a few tiles and get an encounter, which mine happens to be Abra. Unfortunately, not quite what it is normally for this gym, as number 39 corresponds with Jigglypuff. Though it does give us access to Sing, a 100 power, 55% accurate move here. Also, during the grind, Shroomish evolved into Breloom at level 16, and now is very weak, even losing quite a bit of HP in the process. Very unfortunate, but we'll manage. Especially with Torchic evolving into Combuskin at the normal level 16. Helps that the starters are always positioned in the same place with every Pokedex. We get Lotad into Lombre at level 16 as well, which corresponds to Raticate, so that's pretty darn strong to have when we're not actually facing down any fighting types. And lastly, Silcoon does actually end up evolving into Beautifly at level 16. So I guess we're not completely working with evolution levels dependent on Gen 1 Pokemon. Sad for me though, considering this turns our surrogate Beedrill into a Pidgey. Great. Just what I wanted. But with that, Brawly's leading off with a Machop, corresponding with Tentacruel, so that's a pretty threatening Pokemon, as I lead off with Lombre, taking only 4 damage while unfortunately missing with our first Hyper Fang, though the second connects next turn for around 70% as Machop once again does pitiful damage, letting Lombre hit one more Hyper Fang for the KO, leading to Makihita. Seeing as this corresponds to Venonat, I'm actually surprised that Hyper Fang does less than half, as it uses some form of attack reduction. Likely Growl, that leads to Lombre starting to do, like, 1 damage. I have a feeling attack reduction is really broken in this game, since it seems like if the opponent uses it twice, it basically incapacitates a physically attacking Pokemon. So I swap into Breloom and start using Pursuit, doing some minimal damage, but enough to where Lombre should be able to come back in and finish it off with another Hyper Fang, if it weren't for another Growl on entry. This again basically makes the attack useless as Makihita ends up attacking next turn with Supersonic, one of those status moves that ended up getting boosted to really high power instead of programming in Confusion, and therefore nearly KOs Lombre. So I swap back into Breloom, hitting 2 more Pursuits through another hit Supersonic that does around 3/4 of Breloom's HP, managing to KO and win the fight. I really need to get a hold of a Pokemon with either a status move buffed to God status, or either Self-Destruct or Explosion. Not having anything that resists those myself and not being able to fire off those attacks first to ensure my opponent can't just, like, one-shot me with nonsense is a bit worrisome, but we didn't lose anybody in here, so I'm not too worried. With the Knuckle Badge in hand, though, I'm able to head through Granite Cave, Sten Steven packing, and head on over to Route 109 with Mr. Briny, since it's likely Mr. Stone has nothing for me due to the EXP share not existing due to the lack of held items. Or heck, anything but healing items and Pokeballs, to be honest. Even the Soda Pop guy here doesn't have any of those, so I'm a bit disheartened. Would have been nice to have some options while in the middle of a route, instead of having to, run back to the Pokemon Center every time I get hit with an errant Sing or Supersonic. Speaking of getting hit with those, though, while in the Oceanic Museum fighting the Team Aqua Grunts, one of their Carvanas hits Hypnosis on Linoon, and seeing as its dex number 97 corresponds with Hypno, no wonder it one-shots the Weedle masquerading as a normal type. Thankfully, Breloom's Pursuit was enough to put it out of its misery, letting me move into Route 110 for my next encounter in Gulpin. This is dex number 95, corresponding with Onix, so I can't say that this is a terrible encounter, especially in the face of Watson, though I have a feeling that doesn't matter too much with this Match the Pokemon minigame we've been playing for the last few badges. After a grind to level 21, though, May's ready for another battle, leading Wailmer as I go with Combuskin. And since that's dex number 99 corresponding with Kingler, I've got to get the heck out of Dodge and opt for Breloom, hitting it with 5 Pursuits, all while Wailmer seems to not want to do damage whatsoever, instead opting for a status move that just doesn't matter in the slightest, KOing and leading to Grovyle? Dang, she just swapped her starter out on me. Alright, well, considering this is just Ivysaur, it makes sense to just swap back into Combuskin, hitting 3 Embers to KO and leading to her last Pokemon in Numel. Dex number 101 here in Electrode, so I figure swapping into Breloom for a neutrality and getting good damage in seems pretty reasonable, hitting a fair few Pursuits while taking some pot shots, thankfully none of them being Self-Destruct or Explosion, getting Numel down to around 35% before once again swapping into Abra. I'm just hoping a Sing can connect to finish this thing off, and sure enough, after a pound, Sing does manage to do so after Numel takes out half of Abra's HP, KOing and finishing the fight. Admittedly, I'm not doing this matching game mid-fight or else my editor would have to cut a ton of dead air, so you better thank me, Dyer. At least you're not doing Twitter threads right now. The rest of Route 110 provides no trouble, getting me into Mauville City. Of course, Wally's here with his Ralts, taken out by Combuskin quickly since Ember is neutral against the Nidoran masquerading as its own weakness, giving me a quick victory. Now there is technically one more encounter I can get before Watson, that being on Route 117, but I'm already invested in these 6 Pokemon I have now, and with this first part likely ending after Mauville City, I kinda want to reserve the encounter for the second cartridge, where I won't have a full team to start with. Though this team cannot seem to hit Electrike worth a damn. Thankfully, Combuskin can do it and resist its attacks as it's lined up with Rapidash's dex number, though even the gym trainers in here managed to nearly wipe the floor with my entire team due to having such a powerful Pokemon in the face of my dinky dudes. What's worse though is that Meditite is dex number 76, lining up with Golem. Yeah, Golem, which has self-destruct by this point, and goes kablooey on my Beautifly, destroying it in one shot all while my team has already sustained heavy damage. Thankfully, I do take it out with Whismur though, but that means I've got to put Gulpin into the team or else I go without a full party. Or I'm not going with a full party anyway. See, one of the electric traps in Watson's gym after taking out the final gym trainer actually locks you into the gym until you beat him. Meaning I cannot grind to the level cap of 23, nor can I get either Whismur or Gulpin up to the rest of the team, basically handicapping me to 4 usable party members and 2 sacks if needed. Watson leads off with Magnemite, which actually hilariously corresponds with Magneton in the Kanto dex, so Combuskin is still a great lead against it, hitting Ember to 3-shot it while taking barely any damage, leading to Voltorb. This is just Doduo, so Ember is still a viable option, KOing in 3 hits as Voltorb only hits a single attack that doesn't even bring Combuskin below half, leaving just Magneton. Unfortunately, this is just far-fetched, so that's not very strong for him, and easy enough for me to mop the floor with after swapping into Lombre and nailing 3 Hyper Fangs, KOing and winning the fight. Sweet. 3 down, 5 to go, and quite funny seeing Watson basically be forced into using 2 flying types, despite being an electric user normally. Before I head into the next badge's worth of content though, I do explore through Route 117 and take on a few trainers, just to see if there's anything else I can do in terms of progress in this first cartridge before moving on to the second one. And there's really not much. Though I will say, once I realized one of the breeder's Roselias actually corresponded with Gengar, makes me really hope that my Route 117 encounter is just that for such a powerful Pokemon that won't evolve due to Roserade not being in the game. But other than that, the rocks that would normally be removable with Rock Smash are not here on Route 112, indicating the end of the first third of the game. On to the second, and hey, at least this title screen has Pokemon on it. Rapidash and Groudon sure are some choices though, but hey, they got the box art Pokemon half right, give them some credit. Though hold on a second, Rapidash isn't even in the Hoenn Pokedex. Why would they put the sprite into the game for the title screen just for it to never show up again? It just seems like an odd waste of time when they definitely could have put Kyogre in there, both to make sense and not waste development time and resources. Oh well, though it is funny seeing Birch's sequence again only to be spit out at Mauville City immediately. Though I find it weird that I started in Norman's gym during that, only to be booted to Mauville City after some dialogue. I didn't realize it until later, but that's because he just hands you the badge as the previous parts of the map that we've been able to access just aren't in this portion of the game, making places like even Route 117 inaccessible. Well, so much for that Roselia encounter, I guess. But with the second cartridge, our team is completely wiped out, replaced by only Combuskin at level 35 and Meditite at level 25. Oh, well shoot, that's Golem at least, I can use self-destruct. However, the problem lies with Combuskin. See, it's over Flannery's level cap. And Norman's, albeit that one doesn't matter, and Winona's. So, I guess our starter is going to have to be permanently boxed for quite a chunk of the game, and that's pretty disheartening. But with Meditite in hand, I can at least go and grab some new encounters, like on Route 112, getting Machop. Oh geez, this is, lining up with Tentacruel, and that's already a great starting lineup with these two in tow. Fiery Path also gives me a crazy encounter in Slugma, lining up with Kanto Dex number 103, that being Executor. Holy smokes, yes, please keep giving me these nutty encounters, and for the love of God, please keep this thing's evolution level at 38 so I don't lose out on Executor for Cubone. After a short grind with those two, though, I'm finally able to proceed into, Route 111? Why am I able to enter the desert? I guess they didn't feel like programming this area to be blocked off, but it's quite funny that they made Fiery Path basically optional because of it. There's no wild encounters here, though, which sucks, but what sucks more is Machop evolving into Machoke at level 22 and therefore changing Tentacruel into Geodude. That's pretty disheartening, too. Though admittedly we can get another self-destruct user, so I can't be too mad. It just stinks that we lose out on a special tank for a Pokemon that's just worse than Meditite. What am I saying? Machoke is a worse Meditite? This game's a fucking enigma, let me tell you. Moving ahead into Route 113 gives me another new encounter in Skarmory, lining up with Dex number 115 and therefore Kangaskhan. That's not terrible. Somewhat bulky, decently strong normal type that won't evolve into something much weaker is greatly appreciated at this point. Route 114 also gives me a decent encounter in Swablu, lining up with Starmie. Great replacement for Machop after losing out on it being a Tentacruel for a short while there. Just gotta hope again that this thing doesn't evolve into Altaria really quickly and I can get some usage out of this. Though admittedly, as a Stone Evolution in Gen 2's learn sets, it's probably gonna be pretty bad. Tackle, Rapid Spin, Recover, and Bubble Beam. I mean, I guess that's alright. I have Recover and Bubble Beam. That's not the worst thing in the world. And heck, if the second cart goes far enough, Confuse Ray may prove to be a high power move with 100% accuracy, as opposed to the stupidity that is 200 power, 60% accurate Hypnosis. I swear this game's gonna give me a brain aneurysm by the end of this. Right ahead, though, is Meteor Falls, seemingly consisting of only 2 encounters. First of which is Medicham, which technically counts as Species Clause as I already have Meditite. And thank goodness too, since I don't want this thing, seeing as it lines up with Ponyta, and my actual encounter is Lunatone, being number 125 and therefore Electabuzz. Intriguing, definitely an encounter that could be useful for type diversity and decent power behind it, especially considering it already knows Thunder Punch as of level 9. After chasing off the Aqua Team Hunger Force and doing yet another grind to level 26 though, I'm ready to take on Archie at the top of Mount Chimney as he leads Vibrava? Alright, I guess we're getting into weird team territory now, though I guess with the Aqua Grunts having like Cacturne of all things, that's to be expected. I lead Meditite and just start going for self-destruct, being outsped and hit with Bubble. Pretty weak all things considered, but when you're looking at essentially a Seadra hitting that on Golem, that's bound to do heavy damage. But we're definitely benefiting off the lack of quad weaknesses being present in this game. Next turn though, we're not hit with Bubble, instead seeing Poison Gas, which connects while the second self-destruct KOs, leading to Machoke. Well, even in the face of this, self-destruct barely does half. Though because Machoke doesn't have any ground-type moves, I'm good to just fire off another one, getting a high roll to KO in 2 shots, leaving just Sharpedo. Finally, a normal Pokemon! It's not nearly as threatening as it appears though, just being a Krabby in disguise, allowing for my 5th and final self-destruct to do well over half, all while Sharpedo remains a pacifist and literally does nothing, leaving Meditite to KO with 2 rock throws afterwards to win... Oh, wait a second, was that thing level 37? Why? The other 2 were level 24! I literally just noticed this while scripting this video. Honestly, I thought it said level 27 while I was doing the actual fight. But with that potential near-death experience out of the way, we're going to head south of Mount Chimney, straight into Lava Ridge Town, since I guess they found it unnecessary to program in Jagged Pass. Now excuse me, developers, for wanting another encounter before fighting Flannery, especially considering there's no eggs to be found here, and therefore I can't get Wynot. If that was included though, number 160 would have had it lined up to be for Alligator, which could have been a great addition to the team, but considering this game doesn't go beyond 150, it wasn't going to be in there anyway, but I digress. Flannery's ready for battle, or excuse me, I guess Wallace? How did they mix up these sprites? Anyway, leading Slugma as I go with Meditite. It's just self-destruct turbo, baby, though it does get nearly interrupted as Slugma does hit a Hypnosis. Bringing Meditite to just 9 HP as the second self-destruct finishes it off, leading to Grimer. I figure since this is just Hitmonlee's dex number that I should be able to get away with it going down to a single self-destruct, which I'm correct about, leading to her 3rd Pokemon in Torkoal. It's a hop, skip, and jump to the KO here, though, after swapping out for my own Slugma, hitting Hypnosis for well over half, taking very light damage before hitting a Confusion, barely missing the KO as Pursuit finally sends Torkoal over the edge, KOing and leaving just... Swalot? Interesting choice for an ace Pokemon here, but with it being a surrogate Drowsy, Pursuit would be more than enough to deal with it here. If I was actually looking at their corresponding Kanto Pokemon during these fights, instead I just hit 2 Hypnosis for around 2/3, which should have turned me onto the fact that it's a Psychic type because resisting it and 200 power should be, firing some cylinders in my brain, but apparently I'm dumb. But no matter, as Skarmory the Kangaskhan can swoop in and KO with 2 super effective bites, winning me the Heat Badge. Halfway there, though technically like I said before, Norman just gave his badge for free, so we're off to Fortree City with Surf and Tow immediately. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, do take a quick moment and click the like button and check if you're subscribed. People seem to forget that a lot, and it would really help immensely in reaching my goal of hitting 200,000 subscribers by the end of 2023. Diversion aside, May does still come up to us after the gym, but without the go goggles being needed. Who cares? I do figure out though that Norman did indeed give us the badge for free after looking at my trainer card, and I'm definitely a little deflated that I'm just gypped a full gym badge, but I can't complain too much. At least this game is decently functional. Nowhere near as good as Yellow's offerings, but I certainly can take it. After crossing the water on Route 118, though, I'm clear to head on over for some new encounters, including Shuppet on Route 123, numbered 146, and therefore acts as Moltres. Woohoo! Hold up, yeah, that's a winner there, folks! I don't usually let legendaries on my team in Nuzlocks, but considering this is a bootleg and I don't know what matters of nonsense I'm gonna run into later, I think I'm completely fine with using this. Route 118 has no new encounters for me, seeing as the only ones here are Metatite and Altaria, so they're dupes, and for some reason the water has 0 encounters. So I head north to Route 119, evolving Slugma into Macargo at level 28 and losing out on Executor stats and typing exchange for Cubone. Well, I guess this thing will be getting boxed soon, and I suspect I know what for. That's because I found the best encounter in the game right here on Route 119, Tropius. Well, why is that? Take a wild guess what number 150 is in the Kanto Pokedex. Yeah, Tropius is Mewtwo, and somehow comes equipped with Hyper Beam from the get-go with no recharge turn whatsoever. I also somehow caught it in one Great Ball, so maybe catch rates are just straight up broken in this game, which I wouldn't be surprised by. I was just caught off guard by it. In addition to Hyper Beam though, I've got access to Confusion, Psybeam, and Swift. And hilariously, Google Translate was just utterly butchering this entire moveset. I mean, come on. Divine Ray, Bad Light, Meteor, not to mention translating the section that lists the EXP needed to get to the next level as not good enough was hilarious. Oh, and if I highlight Hyper Beam instead, it decides to literally cover Tropius' sprite and call it second rate while changing the translation of all of the moves. Well, at least it decided to get Confusion this time. The Weather Institute doesn't prove to be much of a threat with my new team additions, even Shelly, as she leads with Aron the Weepinbell, and thanks to that poison typing, surely Tropius is a great choice. Though, admittedly, I think I'm a little too trigger-happy with Hyper Beam, barely missing the one-shot as she uses Poison Gas, but Confusion picks up the KO next turn as Carvanha enters next, and since we resist, it's no big deal, one-shotting with Hyper Beam and leading to Spinda. Oh, new Pokemon, but it's just a Tangela, so who cares, finishing the fight with more than half HP remaining. Well then, what about the May fight right after? Surely she stands more of a chance, right? Actually, not remotely, as she only has 2 Pokemon. Swalot's first, being one-shot with Hyper Beam, then Sandshrew is her second, representing Rhydon, so Hyper Beam doesn't do anything, but then Confusion does a ton of damage, with the second KOing to give me the win damageless. It's gonna be rough losing Tropius once we move into the third and final bit of the game. This power is too much, and I'm gonna be very disappointed once I lose it. But that's it, right ahead it's Fortree City, though we do have to stop on Route 120 real quick to get Steven to give us the Devon Scope, which isn't an item, but just something that lets you interact with the field, letting me access the Fortree Gym. I do have to say though, this is a neat little puzzle here. In fact, it's very reminiscent of Gardenia's gym in Diamond and Pearl, where you have to fight each trainer to unlock the next, and then finally reach the gym leader. But instead, they put little obstacles blocking each trainer that lower once you've defeated certain trainers. And if the 2006 release year is to be believed, then that means this company beat Game Freak to the punch by a few months, considering the Japanese release date of Gen 4. Tangents aside though, Tropius is once again an absolute house against Winona. Even without a grind up to the level cap, she's just totally toasted by Hyper Beam and Psybeam. As her lead Flygon, the Goldeen is one-shot by Hyper Beam, Milotic, the Kabutops, is 2-shot by Psybeam, and Skirmy, the Kangaskhan's obliterated with 2 Hyper Beams, only connecting for a whopping 6 points of damage before going down, earning me the Feather Badge. Somehow, someway, Tropius, of all things, has turned into the embodiment of the Danny DeVito blasting meme. It's honestly poetic with just how insanely jank and full of absolute nonsense this port is. Moving right along to Route 120, we've got another new encounter here in Oddish, which just so happens to be Grimer, but I don't think we're going to be worrying about any more encounters, seeing as Metatite the Golem, Tropius the Mewtwo, and to a lesser extent Shuppet the Moltres, seems to be able to carry the team on their own. Though I guess I could add Combuskin back to the party now that the level cap allows for it. The Scorch Slab also doesn't seem to have any encounters, sadly, and Mount Pyre doesn't have anything inside that's new, only Shuppet, though on the outside it does contain Voltorb. I mean, I guess it acting as Doduo and it evolving into Electrode and therefore Dodrio is kinda nice, but again, with us getting so close to the end of the second part, I'm not too keen on wasting time grinding for it to be lost once we move on. The grunts pose no threat here nor in the Aqua hideout within Lily Cove City, and despite Matt having 4 Pokemon, Tropius is once again able to mop the floor here, though I did notice one peculiar thing. On his last Pokemon, Baltoy used a move which Google Translate decided to call Blow Up, which just ended the battle. Considering this is Dex number 131, therefore Lapras, I decided to take a look at the Gen 2 move pool and just didn't notice anything that would necessarily indicate a move that could be translated as that. But, considering it ended the battle, I'm guessing that means it's a move like Roar or Whirlwind, which would be the closest thing that I could think of that translates to blow up literally, which just ends trainer battles and causes them to be a win for me. That's absolutely hilarious. I wonder if we can get any way to exploit that with our own encounters. But with them cleared out, we're good to surf onward to Mosskeep City, which we can't. The screen doesn't change, indicating that this is the end of the second part. Well then, on to part 3 we go with Pikachu and Shiny Gyarados on the title screen with no pupils. Cool. Our team is once again reset though, so I check my party and... oh my god, they let me keep Tropius. There's actually no way. I mean, Blaziken is once again overleveled for both Tate and Liza, as well as Wallace. But who cares? I once again have Tropius with the exact moveset we had in the last part, keeping Confusion, Swift, Psybeam, and Hyper Beam. Our only other Pokemon is Swablu, which is kinda nice since we actually had that from the second part, so it's cool that we get to at least keep 2 of the Pokemon that we encountered, but the rest are just gone. There also, once again, is 0 water encounters anywhere, so we're stuck with just these 2 for Tate and Liza. Or that would be the case if it weren't for Skypillar being open for encounters. I did end up finding myself a Bayonet in there, which you'd think would be really good, but due to the fact that its dex number is 1 after Moltres, it's now just a wimpy Dratini. Oh well, I still have my Tropius, who am I to care? Gym time though is just Tate? Just Liza? I'm not sure which one, but it's a single battle, leading Lunatone as I go with Tropius, hitting Confusion, 2 Psybeams, and another Confusion to KO, all while Lunatone's just kinda tapping me on the shoulder. It's enough to get Tropius to notice, as it does around 40% damage total, but considering both Solrock and... Glalie? Sure, yeah, they both go down to a single Hyper Beam each, winning me the fight and the Mind Badge. Just one more to go. So would you believe it, but the third part of this NES port is probably the least documented. Considering this is all the information available on the Bootleg Games wiki, I'm not surprised that it took me a while to figure out how to use dive. Apparently you just press A on certain screens to dive, then B to resurface. Though I ended up getting an encounter down in the underwater in Clamperl, which is actually Dex number 176. Wow, I figured out how to go beyond 150 in the third and final installment. That's great. It ends up coinciding with Togetic's national Dex number, which isn't the worst, but again, Tropius. It's hard to justify using anything else at this point. Another bit of cryptic nonsense is trying to get into the seafloor cavern. Straight up, I had no idea where to go, thinking I had to go to the top of Skypillar to trigger the next event, though admittedly I should have known that this would have been later as the Pokemon in there are way higher level than Wallace's level cap, but I didn't really care too much. I was able to take out whoever stood in my way as well as a Brawly at the top? I mean, considering his Pinsir, Wynot, and Spheal were single-handedly defeated by Tropius at a lower level, I can't say I understand the purpose of this being here, and maybe this was relevant. Either way, I was able to eventually find the seafloor cavern, which was literally right next to the entrance of Sootopolis City, on the same screen no less, eventually getting to Archie, leading Anorith as I go with, you guessed it, Tropius. This ends up lining up as Jolteon, though it only does 13 points of damage as a Hyper Beam and Confusion combo obliterates it, leading to Bayonet the Dratini. I end up missing with Hyper Beam on turn 1, leading to a wee bit of damage, but 2 Confusions does it in just as quickly. Third out is Kingdra, and this guy's actually pretty decent, lining up with Politoed's Pokedex number as Hyper Beam connects for a third, but once we start seeing some physical attack reduction and Growl, it's time to swap to using Confusion following the second Hyper Beam, delivering 2 more to KO and leaves just right on. This lines up with Chinchu, so expectedly it takes massive damage from a regular Confusion, doing only 6 damage before a second can pick up the KO and the win. Oh, perfect. Guess I just have to go take care of Groudon or Kyogre in the Cave of Origin and we'll be all set for Wallace. My encounter in here ends up being a Rhydon of my own. Not terrible, but without an evolution, it ends up just being Chinchu, which isn't really the most interesting thing in the world. But I'm sure we can find a use for it, somehow. Just 2 floors between me and Kyogre, though it's not actually catchable. Instead, Archie comes in and demands to battle me while using Kyogre. An interesting change to say the least. That is, until I one-shot it with Confusion. But wait, hold up, Kyogre is 198 in the Ruby and Sapphire regional decks. That lines up with Murkrow. Does that mean the Pokemon beyond number 150 actually work as intended? I mean, clearly not, otherwise a single Confusion would not have just one-shot Kyogre while it's 3 levels above my Tropius. But they certainly aren't their Johto National Dex counterparts, at least. But with that anticlimactic end, we're finally free to enter the Sootopolis gym, and boy, this puzzle is just so much more frustrating compared to the normal one. See, it's more of a memorization game instead of the touch all the tiles to proceed game, with certain tiles breaking once you step on them once. This does nearly make Tropius overlevel off of the optional trainers once we fall down below, but we're able to make it through with the help of our other team members, though admittedly seeing the likes of Metagross being fended off by my Swablu has me chuckling just a little bit. Wallace is a bit of a pushover though, as his lead Luvdisc is KO'd by Hyper Beam, as is Celio, leading to Whiscash who dodges Hyper Beam. My only weakness, 10% chance to miss! Not that it matters though, as a Confusion and Psybeam combo end up KOing, though that Psybeam was definitely a critical hit, seeing as Confusion only did about a quarter, and Psybeam only has 15 more power. But I'll take it, as Whiscash barely did any damage to Tropius, allowing me to stay in on Level Up and learn Future Sight over Confusion. Thankfully, this isn't a delayed move, but instead is just a more powerful version of Psychic. So this is a clear 2-shot on Milotic here, not taking a single point of damage, as Starmie comes out next, being blasted by a Future Sight for a little under half. However, I start using Psybeam here because I'm an idiot during these fights and don't actually take the time to look at the translations and come up with a strategy. I mean, what can I say? Tropius the Mewtwo go burr. 3 Psybeams through a single damaging attack picks up the KO, winning me the Rain Badge, and therefore the final badge needed to challenge the Pokemon League. We were so close on attempt number 1, I can taste victory. I just have to finish 6 more important fights. Though I do quickly realize that 6 more important fights turns to 5 quickly, as Wally is nowhere to be seen in the Victory Road. Heck, I almost couldn't find the dang thing. Instead, first finding this battle facility that almost led me to believe that this was the Pokemon League with no Victory Road attached. But I'm glad I didn't go in here since it was a death trap waiting to happen. Getting into Victory Road itself though, my encounter ends up being Ninetales. Not the best in the world considering its moveset is pretty pitiful, though I did notice something here. Safeguard, I think, is in the move pool, which similarly was on Baltoy, the Lapras's moveset during the Aqua Admin fight against Matt earlier. Cross-checking the characters of both attacks leads me to believe that somehow Safeguard has been turned into a Roar or Whirlwind style move? So this is immediately going into the party in case I need to save myself from losing the Nuzlocke. I know, drama has been completely eliminated, but frankly the game is broken, and it is absolutely hilarious to work within these strange confines. Speaking of confines though, I'm not able to get into the league building itself once I emerge on the other side of Victory Road. I have no idea why though, I haven't missed a single badge, fought the guy on the top of Sky Pillar, done everything I could think of in order to have access to this, but I guess I need to do a comb over of the available parts of Hoenn for an NPC that I have to talk to in order to open this up. So I went through Moss Deep City, Sootopolis City, and even the available Pacific town just to the west of the Sky Pillar, even if there's nothing beyond it, as the connecting pathway to Slateport doesn't exist here. But after talking to literally everybody, the building does open up, so at least we're not soft-locked. I would have probably thrown a fit if so, since that would have made for an even more anticlimactic end compared to Tropius the Mewtwo, but I digress. After training up Tropius and Rhydon to the level cap of 55, and then getting completely lazy and wanting to end the run since I was falling asleep during the grind, it's time for the Elite Four. Now, why would Rhydon be my choice of a second Pokemon to fall back on for this league, though? Well, turns out it learns both Self-Destruct and Explosion by level up by this point, with me only thinking of it since I saw the former on the moveset and thought, oh, surely we get Explosion by level 55, which I was thankfully correct. So with these 2 overpowered beat sticks, I should be able to finish this run. Sydney leads off with Absol, myself with Tropius, and I go with Hyper Beam first, nearly KOing as I follow up with Psybeam to KO, taking only 13 damage in the process as Zangoose comes out second. Unfortunately, my first Hyper Beam misses as we take another pot shot for minimal damage, so to conserve power points, I go for Psybeam here for the one-shot actually, as a second Absol takes the field, once again being outed by the Hyper Beam Psybeam combo, leading to Fanpy. Sure, I guess. Hyper Beam? Last out is Lantern, which once again by the power of Hyper Beam and Psybeam, goes down to win me the fight without a problem whatsoever. Also, gotta say thank goodness PowerPoint restoring items were purchasable from the mart before the league itself. It definitely makes using Hyper Beam less of a risk. Next up is Phoebe, leading Dusclops as I go with, once again, Tropius. Seeing as this is beyond the 150 mark in the Pokedex though, I figure it's probably Ghost-type and its own Pokemon, so I go for Psybeam, using 3 of them to take it out while taking light damage in the process, leading to Banette. Of course, being a Dratini stand-in, this thing dies immediately to Hyper Beam, leading to Shuppet. Well shoot, Shuppet the Moltres returns, but Hyper Beam does massive damage all while she lowers my attack, making it so the second Hyper Beam doesn't KO as Fire Blast lands for some decent damage, but not enough to pull Tropius below half as a Psybeam cleans up the third KO of the match, leading to Banette number 2. Sure enough, Hyper Beam second verse same as the first, and that saying can be applied to her final Pokemon in Dusclops number 2, falling to 3 Psybeams just the same way to earn me yet another win. Third up is, Drake? Why is Drake third? I don't think it matters considering this is Glacier's team, but Hyper Beam literally one-shots everything, KOing Glalie, Celio number 2 with Psybeam since the controller ate my input, but it's still a one-shot so who cares, Glalie number 2, and Walrein all in sequence without missing to win. I mean, sure, I'll take it. I mean, plus that saves a power point for the restoring items at least. Fourth up is Phoebe again? Well, this time she's got the Phoebe Overworld sprite, Glacier's Battle sprite, but Drake's team? Once again, the jank of this port knows no bounds. I guess they lead Shogun? Probably the best way to address this amalgamation. I lead Tropius and Hyper Beam the hell out of it to KO, leading to their own Tropius. Uh-oh, the shoe's on the other foot now, as I outspeed and hit Hyper Beam for slightly less than half, taking Comet Punch on the crackback? I mean, it's translated to Comet Fist, so that's all I can really assume it is, though I did initially think it could have been Swift until I realized the text was different for the attack. Regardless, Hyper Beam number 2 connects to bring their Tropius to minimal HP, taking another Comet Punch for around 50 damage before Psybeam cleans up the KO, leading to Salamence. Future Sight ends up putting in enough work to one-shot it, leaving the remainder of their team in Altaria and Donphan being one-shot by 1 Hyper Beam each to give me the final win needed to reach the champion. Alright. 2 Pokemon with actually decent levels, and a backup cheese plan to win via bad game mechanics. I should be able to do it. Steven is actually battling us in the Hall of Fame room instead, with both Birch and May watching on, leading Seviper as I go with Rhydon. Yes, I'm actually using Rhydon. First turn I'm outsped, only to dodge whatever Seviper tried throwing at me to hit Explosion to nearly KO, leading to a sheer cold? Considering what this was translated as being absolute 0 and it getting the immediate one-shot KO, I can only assume that's what that was. It's up to Tropius to finish this off, I guess, hitting Future Sight to KO and leading into Heracross. Hyper Beam does nearly get the KO as he gets a pot shot in, but Psybeam finishes it off, leading to Claydol, who falls to 1 Hyper Beam. Fourth out is Cradilly, once again another Pokemon dealt with by Hyper Beam, this time 2 of them, leaving just 2 more Pokemon remaining. Armaldo comes out 5th, taking my Future Sight for a little under half, so I try following up with a Psybeam, then finishing it off with 1 more Future Sight to KO, leaving just Metagross. For some reason, this thing has Poison Gas, which it gets off turn 1 as I burn a Psybeam on it for minimal damage, using Hyper Beam next turn to do half, finally sealing its fate with 2 Future Sights, all while barely hanging on with 16 HP remaining, winning the fight and crowning me the winner of the most jank Nuzlocke I have ever done in my entire life. I will admit, this one was very strange. I don't know if it was fun. I mean, it was cool getting to see yet another Pokemon game translated to the NES, but I can't say it was a good translation. I mean, the fact that the developers went out of the way to use Hoenn Pokemon, only to give them the stats and typings and movesets of the Kanto Pokemon, is just a baffling decision. Isn't that just more work for them? Well, I suppose they didn't see it that way. However, there is a small post-game bit that you can do following the Pokemon League. Remember that battle facility I mentioned earlier that I thought was the Pokemon League at first, but in fact was a death trap? Yeah, so turns out when you enter there, there's just the battle tower from Ruby and Sapphire with all the trainers having 3 level 99 Pokemon. Somehow I did end up escaping a few of these, with wins no less, but only due to the power of Ninetales being able to end the battle as a victory. Not that big of a deal though, but I just wanted to share what this place had to offer. But that's Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire for the NES. Not necessarily the most interesting game, but certainly a wonky one that made me have to rewire my entire brain in order to get through it, at least with the first 2 parts. The third game is still an anomaly to me. I still have no idea what typings or movesets the Pokemon listed after Tropius are based on, but feel free to let me know in the comments if you're familiar with the language and were able to pick up on anything I missed. Also, if you want to see more bootlegs and crazy obscure Pokemon games, let me know in the comments down below. I recently had a viewer share an entire collection with me, including NES remakes of both Gen 2 as well as Gen 4, so we might be able to explore some wildly messed up versions of Johto and Sinnoh in the future. But with that said, remember to subscribe, like the video, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time.
Hey, Dyer here. Sean didn't mention this, but one of the trainers he fought had a Groudon? What the hell?